Millionaire took his twin girls on a blind date with a black woman. Pretended to be broke, but then, there were few places in New York City where the morning could feel both electric and serene. But the corner cafe on Orchard and Delancey had managed to bottle that contradiction perfectly. The smell of ground beans and cardamom buns drifted through the open doors as pedestrians in tailored coats brushed past joggers and artists with paint-stained hands. On that particular Saturday morning, a table near the window became the stage for an encounter that would upend expectations, challenge egos, and peel back layers of a man who had spent years mastering the art of hiding in plain sight. Her name was Camille Johnson, and she had no idea who she was about to meet. She wore her favorite green wrap dress, not because she was trying to impress anyone, but because she liked how it hugged her at the waist and made her feel like the woman her grandmother raised her to be, confident, grounded, and unafraid of softness. Her hair, a cascade of coily black waves, was pulled back from her face with gold pins that shimmered every time sunlight spilled through the window. Her eyes, sharp, searching, held a mix of nerves and a quiet readiness. Not because she needed this date to go perfectly, but because she'd promised herself she wouldn't ghost another friend's setup. "I swear, Cammy, he's not like the others," her friend Imani had insisted over the phone. I know, you hate setups. But this one, just try. He's different. And the girls? You're gonna love them." "The girls?" she'd asked, confused. "You'll see," Imani said cryptically. Now here she was, 15 minutes early, hands curled around a cup of hibiscus tea, wondering how she'd let herself get talked into this. The only thing more unpredictable than blind dates, she thought, was blind dates involving someone else's children. Across the street, parked in an unremarkable silver Subaru that had clearly seen better days, Elliot Langford watched the cafe with the casual anxiety of a man trying to talk himself out of a bad idea. "Daddy, are you going to stare through the window the whole time, or are we going in?" asked Ellis, his older twin by 2 minutes, whose 10-year-old tone carried a world-weary sass that rivaled most adults. "I'm just thinking," Elliot replied, adjusting the mirror. "She looks nice," said Eden, the quieter twin, peeking through the other window. "And she's drinking tea. That's good, right? Tea people are calm." "I like tea," Ellis added. "Girls," Elliot said slowly, turning toward them. "Do you remember what we talked about?" "Yes," they said in unison, bored already. "No talking about the company. No talking about the house in Tribeca. No talking about private school unless she asks first, and definitely no talking about the boat." "I still think it's weird you're pretending to be broke," Ellis muttered. "I'm not pretending to be broke. I'm just simplifying the story," Elliot replied. "Which is code for pretending to be broke," Eden said gently. Elliot sighed. "Look, when people know you've got money, it changes things. They either get weird or distant or clingy. I just want her to get to know me, not the numbers." "And you're bringing us why?" Eden asked. "Because if she's going to like me, she needs to like us," Elliot said. "Besides, you two are the best part of me. I figured that should be clear from the start." Ellis smirked. "That's the first nice thing you've said today. I said you had great hair earlier. You said it was adequate and symmetrical." Elliot laughed. "Let's go, girls." Camille looked up as the bell above the cafe door jingled. Her eyebrows lifted just slightly as she took in the trio walking toward her table. A man in a slightly wrinkled blue button-up, jeans that had definitely been ironed this morning, and a pair of twins in matching mustard yellow jackets, one with a bold grin and the other clutching a sketchbook like it contained sacred scripture. He was taller than she expected. Not the intimidating kind of tall, but the easy kind. The kind that made her feel like she wouldn't have to be the only grown-up in the room. His hair was neatly clipped, salt and pepper at the edges in a way that only made his face look more boyish. And when he smiled, lopsided, sheepish, she saw the faintest dimple she wasn't prepared for. "Camille?" he asked. She stood, offering her hand. Hi, I'm guessing you're Elliot. That's me. These two troublemakers are Ellis and Eden. They insisted on tagging along. Camille laughed as she shook each of their hands, surprised when Ellis offered a firm grip and Eden gave a shy curtsy. Nice to meet you, ladies, Camille said. I like your jackets. Target, Ellis said proudly. On sale. Dad's a budgeter. Elliot cleared his throat. We're very responsible with our finances. Camille raised an eyebrow, amused. That's good. You'd be surprised how many people aren't. He smiled again, and this time it reached his eyes. They ordered pastries and sat together in a sunlit corner, the twins flanking Camille like tiny judgmental bodyguards. What began as slightly awkward small talk quickly dissolved into easy, playful conversation. Camille, who had worked with children before as an art therapist, slipped effortlessly into dialogue with the girls, asking about their favorite subjects, science for Eden, drama for Ellis, their dream careers, inventor and astronaut chef, respectively, and their opinion on why adults always pretended not to like cartoons. They say it's for kids, but then they cry during the sad episodes, Eden said with a knowing nod. And they say things like, it's just really well written, Ellis added. Camille laughed so hard she almost spilled her tea. Elliot sat back and watched her, not in a possessive way, but like someone trying to memorize the shape of a moment. It had been a long time since he'd seen someone speak to his daughters like this, not just politely, not condescendingly, but genuinely. Like their thoughts mattered. Like their spirits were interesting. So what do you do, Camille? He asked after a while. I'm an art therapist, she said. Mostly I work with kids and teens. Lots of trauma-informed work. Which is just a fancy way of saying I help them turn the heavy stuff into paint and clay. Eden's eyes lit up. Can I show you my drawings? Absolutely, Camille said. Eden slid her sketchbook across the table, and for the next 10 minutes, Camille flipped through page after page of intricate pencil renderings. Treehouses, underwater cities, dragons with sad eyes. She paused at one page and looked up. This one's beautiful, she said. Is this a city in the clouds? Eden nodded. It's where people go when they need to be alone but don't want to be lonely. Camille swallowed. That's a very grown-up way to see the world. She's a little genius, Elliot said, and there was no irony in his voice, just admiration. Camille met his gaze again, and for a moment, something unspoken passed between them, a flicker of understanding, of quiet recognition. After 2 hours and 3 refills of tea, the girls excused themselves to explore the bookstore next door, leaving Elliot and Camille alone for the first time. So, she said, Imani said you're in consulting? He hesitated. Yeah, something like that. Logistics, mostly. Boring stuff. She tilted her head. You're not very good at lying. Elliot laughed. Was it that bad? It wasn't bad, she said. Just careful. You seem like someone who's used to protecting parts of himself. He grew quiet. That's not inaccurate. She didn't press. Instead, she sipped her tea and said, Well, I appreciate you not leading with a resume. Most men on these dates show up listing their assets like they're on Shark Tank. He grinned. Yeah? What would have happened if I had? You'd have missed your chance. He looked at her, really looked, and said, Then I'm glad I didn't. But neither of them knew that someone else had just entered the cafe. A woman in a sharp black coat and blood-red lipstick. She scanned the room, frowned when she spotted Elliot, then pulled out her phone. Because secrets have a way of surfacing. And next time Camille would learn exactly who Elliot Langford really was, and why so many people wanted to keep it buried. The next day, Camille was still thinking about the way Eden's eyes lit up when she talked about cloud cities, the sly way Ellis smirked before making some perfectly timed joke, and most of all, the quiet calm of Elliot Langford, a man who had not once tried to dominate the conversation, impress her with a shiny title, or lean into cliché charm. Instead, he had simply been there, present, engaged, gentle in ways that didn't ask to be praised. It was that gentleness that stuck with her. And yet, even as she watered her plants that morning and added almond milk to her coffee, something in the back of her mind refused to settle. Maybe it was the way he had hesitated when she asked about his job, or the fact that he'd referred to their boat in the plural, only to immediately correct himself with a casual car instead. She had chalked it up to awkward phrasing. But now it felt like something was being tucked behind his smile. Elliot, meanwhile, was spiraling. Not in the dramatic, movie montage way. No pacing across high-rise floors with a whiskey glass. No tense conversations with assistants and earpieces. Just a man in his robe, sitting on the edge of a perfectly made bed in a Tribeca penthouse he hadn't told Camille existed, staring at his phone like it held a landmine. The text from Camille was simple. "Hey you. Had a lovely time yesterday. Hope the twins didn't scare you off, smiley face." He read it 5 times before replying. "They adored you. I did too. Maybe dinner soon." He didn't mention that Ellis had already asked when they were seeing her again, or that Eden had tried to draw her from memory, then frowned and said, "I didn't get her eyes right. Hers are stronger than that." But trouble had already started to stir. Because the woman in the black coat from the cafe, her name was Mira Thornton, and she wasn't just anyone. She was Elliot's former publicist, and one of the few people who had known him before the inheritance, the business empire, and the deliberate low profile. She had seen him at his best and at his most guarded. And Mira, despite her taste for luxury, didn't care much for secrets when they weren't hers to hold. So when she spotted Elliot sitting with an unfamiliar woman and his daughters, dressed in thrifted denim like some substitute teacher, her curiosity kicked into high gear. By Monday morning, a photo had made it to her phone via a client's assistant, Camille, exiting the cafe alone, smiling. Not in a posed way. Not for the public. Just smiling. And Mira knew what that kind of smile meant. Oh, she thought. Meanwhile, Camille was walking through the community center where she ran her afternoon sessions, a space she had helped transform from a drafty, underfunded basement into a colorful, expressive haven filled with kids, music, and the smell of acrylic paint and washable glue. On her desk sat a small bouquet of ranunculus flowers. No note, just a brown paper wrapping with twine and a soft, floral smell that instantly made her chest loosen. She knew it was him, and she smiled again, until her phone buzzed. "Imani, girl, you didn't tell me he was Elliot Langford." Camille stared at the screen. "Camille, I didn't. Because he's not." "Imani, you sure? Check this." Attached was a Forbes article from 6 months ago, titled "The Quiet Heir," inside Elliot Langford's private rise to power. The image showed a man standing in front of a massive glass building in Tokyo. Salt and pepper hair, soft eyes, that same lopsided smile. Camille's breath caught. It was him. The date, the modest clothes, the Subaru that coughed when it reversed, all of it had been a performance. And she had fallen for it. That evening, Camille sat alone in her apartment, her cup of tea gone cold. She wasn't angry in the way she expected. She was something worse, disappointed. Because it wasn't about the money. She had dated successful men before. She'd walked into penthouses that smelled like imported soap and unattainable silence. She had even once flown to the Hamptons in a helicopter, just to realize halfway through dinner that the man couldn't remember the name of her profession. But Elliot hadn't been like that. He had been human, present, curious, honest, or so she thought. A knock came at the door. She stood, surprised, only to find Elliot on the other side, wearing the same sheepish expression that had charmed her the first time. "Hey," he said softly. "I figured I owed you something close to the truth." She opened the door wider, arms folded. "I just got off the phone with my friend. Turns out, you're not just a logistics consultant." Elliot exhaled. "No, I'm not." "Then what are you?" He hesitated. "A father. A man who made his first billion too young." Someone who learned the hard way that money invites masks, not just from others, but from yourself. She didn't reply. He continued, I was raised by my grandmother in Baltimore. We lived in a row house with a leaky roof and a heater that groaned in winter. I got into NYU on a scholarship, then built a tech startup that got acquired before I turned 30. After that, I stopped trusting people. They either wanted to be me or wanted something from me. Camille's expression softened, but only slightly. So you pretended to be broke? I wanted to see who I could be without the suit, without the headlines. I wanted someone who would see me, not the headlines or the estate. And did you think I'd care? No, I thought you wouldn't. He looked at her with a kind of tired vulnerability that only came from being lonely in a room full of admiration. That's what scared me the most. Camille looked at him long and hard, searching for a crack, a performance, something rehearsed. But all she saw was a man unsure of how to be loved for himself. And something inside her, some small, stubborn part that still believed in second chances, whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was where the Real story started. Not at the cafe, not with the twins, but here, on her porch, in the dark, with the truth finally stepping forward. I'm not mad, she said at last, but I'm not impressed either. Elliot nodded slowly. That's fair. She paused. But you can come inside, if you're ready to tell the rest of the truth. He smiled, something raw and unguarded in it. I'm ready if you are. Elliot stepped into Camille's apartment like a man walking into a courtroom he hadn't prepared for, knowing the truth was about to be weighed, measured, and judged not by wealth or charm, but by something far less predictable, a woman who had learned to read intention like a language. Camille's home was warm, modest, and alive with small details. Thick books stacked under potted plants, a colorful gallery wall of framed children's art, and the scent of eucalyptus drifting faintly from the kitchen. Nothing here screamed for attention, yet everything felt chosen, deliberate, lived in. It reminded him of the grandmother who raised him, a home built with care, not credit. Shoes off, Camille said without looking back, already walking into the living room. He slipped them off obediently, patting across the hardwood like a kid visiting a friend's house for the first time. She handed him a mug of freshly steeped tea, chamomile with a splash of oat milk, and gestured toward the couch. Sit, she said. Talk. He did. And for the next hour, Elliot Langford told Camille Johnson everything. He started with the accident that changed everything, the death of his parents in a car crash when he was 16, and how his grandmother took him in even though she was already caring for two younger cousins and a blind uncle. He told her about the anger that nearly derailed him in college, and how coding became a way to organize the chaos in his mind, a puzzle he could solve when real life made no sense. He told her about the company, Lyros, a logistics platform that streamlined transportation across major cities, and how it sold for just over $800 million. About how he didn't feel happy when the wire transfer hit, only numb. He told her about the mansion in Westchester that he never moved into, about the women who laughed louder when they saw the driver, and the friends who stopped calling when he said no for once. And finally, he told her about the twins, how Eden and Ellis weren't from some dramatic divorce or a brief marriage, but from a decision he made at 34, after two failed engagements and years of watching life blur by. I didn't want to wait to be the perfect husband to be a father, he said. So I adopted them. Two brilliant baby girls who had been left at the same hospital on the same day. Different mothers, no names. But from the moment I held them, they were mine. Camille said nothing at first. She just listened, the kind of listening that didn't come with nods or interjections, but with presence. A quiet that asked for truth and gave it room to stretch out and breathe. When he finished, he looked at her and said, That's me. The whole picture. No filters. She leaned back in her chair, fingers tracing the rim of her mug. That was a lot, she said. I know. I appreciate you saying it. He waited. But I still don't know if I can trust you, she added, not cruelly, just honestly. You say all the right things, Elliot. You tell the story like you've told it before. I have, he admitted. To lawyers, to investors, to adoption boards. But never like this. Not, not to someone I actually want to be real with. Camille tilted her head. You want real? He nodded. Then you're going to have to show up without hiding next time. No costumes. No borrowed personas. Just you. And if you're serious about seeing where this goes, she stood, then you and the girls can come over next Saturday. For dinner. His face lit up, not with ego, but with something that looked suspiciously like relief. Dinner, he repeated. Any rules I should know about? She smirked. Just one. No pretending you don't like dessert. I've seen your smile when Eden pulls out cookies. He laughed. Guilty. As he walked out into the night, Elliot didn't feel lighter, not exactly. But he felt anchored, finally, to something he hadn't realized he was missing. Not approval, but truth. Camille, on the other hand, didn't fall asleep easily. Even with the warmth of chamomile still on her tongue, her thoughts churned. She believed people could change. She worked with trauma every day, after all, but that didn't mean she handed out trust like party favors. Still, there had been something in his voice when he talked about the girls. Not pride, not performance, but devotion, the kind that wasn't loud, but certain. She thought of Eden's quiet sketches, of Ellis's perfectly timed one-liners, and how both of them had studied her like they were asking, "Are you someone worth letting in?" She wanted to be. And not because of Elliot's money, which, to be honest, made her feel less impressed now, but because she had seen how easily people with good hearts could be buried under performance, protection, and expectation. She just hoped he was done hiding. Saturday arrived faster than expected. Elliot and the twins showed up 5 minutes early, carrying a casserole dish that clearly hadn't been touched by fire and a bouquet of wildflowers wrapped in recycled sheet music. Your dad tried to cook, Ellis said bluntly at the door, holding the casserole like it was radioactive. We voted no. Camille burst out laughing. Good to know I'm safe. Dinner was loud and full of mismatched plates. Camille made honey garlic chicken and jasmine rice, and the twins devoured it like they hadn't eaten in a week. Afterward, Eden and Camille painted while Ellis narrated an impromptu story involving aliens, stolen waffles, and a dinosaur named Eugene. By the time the dishes were drying and the sun had fully set, Elliot found Camille standing in the kitchen, watching the twins on the floor piecing together a jigsaw puzzle. I don't want to rush anything, he said, voice low, almost hesitant. But I need you to know, I've never brought them to anyone's home before. Camille turned to him. You mean I'm the test run? He chuckled. I mean you're the first person I wanted to really know us. She looked at him for a long time, not through him, not past him, but into him. Then I hope you're ready, she said. Because you're not just stepping into my life, Elliot. You're stepping into something real. And real takes work. I'm not afraid of work. Good, she said. Because next time, you're doing dishes. But even as warmth began to build between them, something darker stirred in the background. Mira Thornton, the ex-publicist with a grudge, had not let Elliot's reemergence go unnoticed. And someone else had taken notice too, a rival investor from his early days, who had once accused Elliot of stealing his patent and had never let go of the bitterness. A photo of Camille and the girls had surfaced online. Nothing scandalous, just a candid from the cafe, but in the wrong hands, it was fuel. Fuel for leverage. Fuel for manipulation. And as Elliot finally let his walls down, he didn't yet realize that someone out there was preparing to weaponize the one thing he cared about most. His family. It had been 3 weeks since Camille invited Elliot and the twins into her home, and already, their lives had begun to orbit one another with the quiet gravity of people discovering not just mutual affection, but something more enduring: rhythm, trust, presence. By now, it had become a sort of ritual. Friday night dinners in Camille's cozy apartment, complete with board games, mismatched socks, and Eden's growing mural on the kitchen wall. In return, Sundays were spent at Elliot's smaller Soho flat, a space he had always kept private, even from some of his closest colleagues, as a refuge from the demands of a world that saw him more as asset than man. And Camille? She had fit into that space as if it had always been waiting for her. She didn't ask about stocks or appraisals. She asked how his week had felt. She didn't flinch when he confessed how, even after all the wealth, he sometimes feared becoming a man his daughters wouldn't admire. And when Ellis, during a pancake breakfast, casually blurted, "Camille, can you just marry Dad already so we don't have to keep packing bags?" Neither of them laughed. Not right away. Camille had simply blinked, wiped her mouth gently, and said, "Well, we'd have to talk about closet space first." Elliot had looked at her like he didn't know whether to grin or cry. It was real. It was fragile. And it was in danger. The article broke on a Thursday morning. Camille had just wrapped up a particularly intense art therapy session with a young boy recovering from a house fire. Her hands were still stained with watercolor when her phone began vibrating on her desk. Once, twice, then 3 times in rapid succession. Imani. "Girl, why are you on page 6? Link. Millionaire tech mogul Elliot Langford spotted with mystery woman and twin girls. Are wedding bells ringing?" The photo was unmistakable. Camille, holding Eden's hand, laughing, Ellis leaning into her side, Elliot watching from just behind them with that warm, unguarded gaze he usually reserved for their quietest moments. But the caption told a different story, a curated narrative, heavy with implication. Sources say Langford may have finally found the woman to tame him. But who is this unknown art therapist from Brooklyn? And what does her sudden closeness to his children mean for his billion-dollar empire? Camille's stomach dropped. There were already hundreds of comments, some admiring, others predictable in their ignorance, dissecting her hair, her skin, her profession, the fact that she didn't look like someone who would be in his world. And worse, there were mentions of her work, the community center, her clients, kids whose privacy could be compromised if this storm didn't pass quickly. Within the hour, 3 donors had called to pause their support. The article had done more than expose a relationship. It had endangered a mission. Elliot got the call from Mira. Her voice, crisp and smooth as ever, had the unmistakable tone of "I told you so." "You need to respond, Elliot. Fast. Issue a statement. Frame the narrative before someone else does." He was quiet for a long beat. "Did you plant this?" he asked softly. She didn't answer directly. "I'm not your enemy," she said instead. "But you and I both know when a man like you dates a woman like her, the press isn't going to handle it delicately. Better to shape it than be shaped." Elliot hung up. He was already reaching for his coat. Camille didn't answer the door when he arrived. He knocked gently, then louder. Finally, she opened it. Eyes red but dry, jaw set in a way that told him everything he needed to know. "You should go," she said. He shook his head, not without talking. "I told you I didn't want attention. I told you I didn't want to be someone's statement or scandal or headline." "I didn't do this," he said, voice cracking. "Camille, I swear. I believe you. That's the problem." She stepped back, just enough for him to enter. She sat on the couch, motioned for him to sit too. He didn't. "I spent years building that center," she said. "Brick by brick, grant by grant, child by child. And now, 3 sponsors pulled funding today. Because of this, not because of anything I did wrong, but because they don't want to be involved in controversy. I'll replace every dollar," Elliot said. 10 times over. I'll fix it." Camille looked up at him, pain glinting behind her steadiness. "You can't buy trust or erase damage just because you have the means to." He winced. "I know. I wanted something real with you, Camille. I still do." Then prove it. He blinked. How? She stood, walking toward him slowly. Not with grand gestures. Not with donations. Prove it by standing beside me when it's not convenient. Prove it by helping clean up the mess, not just writing a check and disappearing. He nodded. Tell me what you need. She hesitated, then handed him a paper, a list of foundations, donors, and contacts she was going to meet with the next day. You want to be in this? Come sit in the discomfort. Come fight with me. Not for me, with me. The next day, Elliot Langford walked into a nonprofit boardroom in Harlem wearing jeans, a plain black hoodie, and a nervous smile. He stood beside Camille as she pitched her center's mission to a group of skeptical donors, some of whom had only agreed to meet because of his name. But he didn't dominate the room. He didn't say he was funding everything. He let Camille lead. And when one donor asked why he was even there, Elliot said, simply, because this woman changed my life. And because my daughters are safer in a world where her work exists. The room fell quiet. Then, slowly, hands began to raise. By the following week, not only had Camille replaced the lost funding, she had tripled it. Several new backers had come forward, inspired by her story, her resilience, and her refusal to fold under pressure. Still, the question lingered between them. What happens now? Elliot knew he couldn't keep hiding behind caution. The world knew who he was. Now, they knew Camille too. There would be no going back. That night, as they walked through Prospect Park, Eden and Ellis running ahead, chasing fireflies, Elliot reached for her hand. I've done a lot of building in my life, he said. But I want this to be the first thing I build right. She squeezed his hand gently. You don't have to build me anything, Elliot, she said. Just don't disappear when it gets hard. I'm not going anywhere, he whispered. And in the distance, laughter rose into the warm spring air, not from headlines, not from judgment, but from two children who didn't care about money or tabloids or scandal. Only the sound of joy, only the sight of home beginning to take shape. There are moments in life when silence says more than any speech, when the look in someone's eyes can answer the deepest questions, and when a dinner table, filled with laughter and mismatched napkins, becomes the heart of something sacred, not just a family, but a future. And that's exactly what was beginning to unfold in Elliot Langford's life. Not because he had decided it, or designed it, or declared it in a Forbes article, but because a woman named Camille Johnson had shown him what it meant to show up, to remain present, to choose consistency over performance, vulnerability over perfection. It was Eden who noticed first. They were at the community center, now not only fully funded again, but slowly becoming a hub for new partnerships and programs, thanks to the attention, both wanted and not, that had followed Elliot's public stand beside Camille. Eden sat quietly in the back of Camille's art room, sketchbook open on her lap. Camille had been leading a small group of fifth graders through a visualization exercise about drawing their safe place. The sun streamed through the windows in soft beams, and faint music played in the background. Eden tugged on Camille's sleeve. I think you're his safe place, she whispered, not looking up from her drawing. Camille blinked, caught off guard. Whose? Dad's, she said. You're the only person he's quiet around. In a good way. Camille knelt beside her. How can you tell? Eden shrugged. Because when he's around you, he listens. Camille didn't say anything. She just tucked a strand of Eden's hair behind her ear and kissed her forehead. That evening, Elliot cooked. Well, cooked was generous. He warmed up pasta he'd oversalted and forgot to add basil to the sauce. Camille teased him relentlessly for it. But when they sat at the table together, with the twins giggling over their own invented card game and Camille's hand resting gently on Elliot's knee, there was something weightier in the air. Something unspoken, but unmistakable. I've been thinking, Elliot said after dinner, the girls already curled up on the couch watching a nature documentary. Camille looked at him, a brow raised. That's dangerous. He chuckled nervously, then grew serious. I've spent years building empires and avoiding mess. I've dated women who looked good in photos and sounded great on panels. But I've never, not once, built anything that felt like this. He took a small box from his pocket. Camille's breath caught, not because she expected it, but because she didn't. I'm not asking you to marry me, Elliot said quickly. Not yet. That would be rushing something that deserves patience. He opened the box. Inside was a simple ring, not flashy, not enormous. A delicate gold band set with two tiny stones, one yellow, one green. For Ellis and Eden, he said. A promise that I'm not going anywhere. Camille's eyes filled with tears. She reached out, closing the box gently, then placing her hand over his. You're already here, she whispered. Weeks passed. Life didn't become perfect, because real love never guarantees perfection. But it became fuller, richer. Camille learned to live with paparazzi in the periphery, and Elliot learned to stop shrinking his story. The twins started calling her C.J., short for Camille Johnson, but said with a love that hinted at something closer to mom. They traveled together to her hometown in Maryland, where Elliot quietly fixed a leaking church roof, and to Japan, where Eden gasped at cherry blossoms and Ellis tried to barter for samurai swords. And through it all, Camille remained steady, not dazzled, not overwhelmed, just present, as she had always been. On the day of the community center's anniversary gala, now hosted in a space twice the size of the original, Camille stood before a packed room filled with donors, kids, and friends, wearing a navy blue jumpsuit and a pair of earrings Eden had picked out. She didn't speak about money. She spoke about moments. A boy who learned to paint through his grief. A girl who found language through clay. A father who learned to sit still and listen. And a family that had learned, together, how to start over. Somewhere in the back, Elliot watched her speak, a smile pulling at his lips. Beside him, Ellis leaned over and whispered, Are you going to marry her yet? Or are you still pretending to be chill? He laughed. Soon, he said, but we're building something first. And in that moment, in a room full of light, memory, and soft music, it was clear to everyone who saw them. They weren't playing pretend anymore. They were home,